Yo brodies, you know what? After creating over 100 videos about mechanical keyboards, varying from extreme budget to some expensive ones, there's always a place in my heart for those bang for the buck options that offer comparable sound and feel without necessarily having to break the bank. One of those is the Rakk Haribon. I love it so much that I had it custom painted and I modded its internals with my favorite modding methods. So in this video, I'll share all of that, and I also feature a couple of mechanical switches from Moondrop, the linear Lunalight and the tactile Tessence, both of which sound and feel pretty good out of the box. With that being said, let's get into it. In case you missed my dedicated unboxing, teardown, and review of the Rakk Haribon, you can watch it here. I decided to have it painted matte white with some gold accents on the volume knob and the debossed Rakk logo at the bottom. A local painter under the name Teclado Keyboards did a decent job here. For the most part, the paint job is pretty good with no significant blobs or imperfections. It's safe to say that I'm fairly satisfied with the quality. My only gripe is that the paint job made it quite difficult to tear this keyboard apart. More on that later. This is not sponsored, I paid for it, but I'll put a link below where you can reach Teclado Keyboards if you're interested. Now, as I pointed out earlier, we're going to use Moondrop switches here, and my personal choice is the Moondrop Lunalight, which is linear, but of course, we're also going to include a sound test for the Moondrop Tessence, which is tactile. As for the keycaps, I think the Novel Keys P-Bow is a good partner for this modded Rakk Haribon. Tearing this keyboard apart is pretty easy, well, at least for the stock non-painted version of this. All you have to do is remove the screws around, and normally, you can easily lift the top casing. However, since the paint is pretty thick, it is quite challenging to remove. I think it could have been better if Teclado Keyboard sanded it a bit. Nevertheless, with a little bit of massaging, I was able to remove the top casing. To be fair, even the inner parts are nicely painted, which is nice to see. Next, we can now lift the PCB and plate combo gently and remove the cables from the battery and the Type-C daughter board. Now, one modification that I want to do here is replacing the stock silicone gaskets with a softer porn gasket. More on that later. The paint job on the volume knob is pretty good too, as you can see here. Another important modification that I want to do with this keyboard is to modify the stock stabilizers because these are unlubed. Speaking of modifying the stabilizers, I'm going to use the switch lube from Zion Studios PH, which is essentially a Crytox 205 grade 0. And then on the wire, I wrapped a thin layer of micropore tape around it to dampen the contact between the wire and the plastic, while also minimizing the rattle. I applied a thin layer of lube on both the housing and the stem, and a substantial amount around the wire. This mod requires a little bit of break-in period to soften the micropore a bit. It might feel mushy at first, but after a while, it should sound and feel pretty good. I've been using this mod for my personal builds for years now, and this is still my favorite method. And since I'm planning on using it as my daily driver, I also added some stabilizer pads to dampen the plastic to PCB contact. I think this is from KBD fans. Now, before rebuilding the keyboard back, especially for keyboards with screw-in stabilizers like this, it is a good idea to test it out first. Now, the next modification that I want to do, which is also one of my personal favorites, is the tape mod. Easily one of the easiest and most impactful mod that you can do to significantly change the sound signature of your keyboard. All you have to do is add a layer of masking tape at the back of the PCB to act as a sort of filter to make your keyboard sound more poppy or marbly alongside the included switch pad. However, if you want to preserve the real sound signature of your keyboard, especially the switches, don't do this mod. And lastly, like I said earlier, I'm going to replace the stiff silicone gaskets with softer porn gaskets. I believe what I use here is the D65 gaskets, also from KBD fans. With this, it allows a little bit more flex than the stock silicone gaskets. Most brands choose to use silicone material because I believe it is cheaper than poron. Alright, so with all the mods taken care of, let's move our focus to the Moondrop switches. Full disclosure, this is also not sponsored, but Moondrop did send a good amount of switches for this build. We have the Tessence, which is tactile, and the Lunalight, which is linear. These switches were made in collaboration with D-Square, which is the switch designer, and were manufactured by Haimu and are currently being offered by Drop.com. The packaging is pretty neat with a black box featuring a slide type packaging design. Upon opening the box, the first thing that will greet you is a waifu photo card. Quite interesting to say the least. At the back of it, we have the socials of Moondrop. Next, we have a nice foam cover, and the switches itself nicely laid out on a foam platform. The Moondrop Lunalight is a linear switch with an actuation force of around 40 grams. It features a switch design almost similar to Kill boxes, with a goal to minimize wobble, and for the most part, pretty smooth and stable. It is a 5-pin switch, which means it is compatible with PC mount keyboards. For some reason, it has a couple of tiny holes at the bottom. Now, both the top and bottom housings are made out of nylon plastic and are colored white. The stem is made out of POM material and is pre-lubed out of the factory. Both the legs and side rails are substantially lubed. The spring is made out of KOS stainless steel and features a two-stage design. Looking closer, the spring also has some lube, which is nice. On the other hand, the Moondrop Tessence is a tactile switch with a slightly heavier actuation force of around 50 grams. For a tactile switch, that is pretty lightweight, I would say. Design-wise, it is basically the same as the Moondrop Lunalight, except for the stem of course, and the color, which in this case is a sort of grayish blue. The construction is pretty much the same, featuring nylon plastic for both the top and bottom housing, and POM for the stem. It is also pre-lubed out of the factory. However, the tactile bump is also lubed, so that's definitely going to affect the tactile feel of it. The tactile bump features an elongated curve with a rounded sudden drop towards the end. In actual feel, however, it has a short buffer before you feel the sudden but relatively smooth drop. It's pretty lightweight though, so you might not feel the entirety of that tactile bump. It also features KOS stainless steel spring, but for some reason, I can hear some pinging sound with the Tessence. Now, the Lunalight measures around 14.2mm from top to bottom, while the Tessence is a tad shorter at around 14.1mm. Ultimately, both have short stems, which will interfere with cherry profile keycaps when used on north-facing sockets. Overall, the design and construction of both of these switches are pretty good, and again, my personal favorite is the Lunalight. Moving on, let me just install these Novelkeys Peebo keycaps. I chose this because I like the combination of the colors, white, purple, and blue, and I think it looks relatively clean even with these Japanese sub-legends. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the final look of our build. As you can tell, it is perfect for Jet themed desk setup, especially with this Jet themed desk mat that I got from Narrative Gears. Also, if you need a perfect partner for your Rakk Haribon, you can get a precisely cut wrist rest from Iron Meets Wood. I'll put some links below for you to check out. By the way, I noticed that a lot of you guys, my viewers, are not yet subscribed, so if you find my videos helpful or at least informative, a new subscriber will mean a lot to me. So click that red button and hit that bell notification as well so you won't miss out. Thank you. Now, before we finish this video, here are some sound tests for you guys. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this build, and up until now, it is still currently my daily driver. And even though I like the utility and features of the ROG Azoth, it still cannot match the sound and feel of a full aluminum gasket mount keyboard like this Rakk Haribon, especially with all the modifications that we did here. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Nothing was paid in this video, but the brands that I mentioned did send me their products to be featured. You can check the links below if you're interested. Thank you for watching, again please consider subscribing, and see you next time. Have a great day guys, you're awesome.